This is a debate for the Office of State Comptroller. The debate will be organized in 5 stages. And candidates, I've been told that because the mult box isn't working, that you're going to have to make your statements from the podium, if that's okay. So there'll be a lot of shifting around up here, but that way it can be recorded without any problems. And I will take a chair over there because I'm aging rapidly. This debate will be open. There'll be an opening statement of 90 seconds. Young David, come on up so they can see you. Opening statement, the status of my campaign today. Then the moderator, me, will ask each candidate a question. By the way, the opening statement is 90 seconds. Then number 2, I'll ask each candidate a question, and I'll have 90 seconds to respond. Then each candidate will ask the other candidate a question. The question could be no longer than 30 seconds, and the answer could be no longer than 90. Then we will have, everyone's getting excited, then we will have a question from the audience, and we do have a microphone today, which will make it a lot easier. And then we'll have a closing statement, why I'm the best candidate for the Office of State Comptroller. Joyce Saxon is not here today, but young David Cameron, our executive director, the man with hair, will be doing the countdown at the, for some of us,
a lot of hair,
baby boomers, chronologically challenged. I just can't stand that young man, and we'll leave it at that. He's a nice young fella, but look at that hair. All right, we'll move on. Now, we always start the debate the very simple way. We're using the cards of Jay Doherty. Carole, pick a card. There you go. You're number 2, which means Dan Hynes will start the debate. And these cards, by the way, this is Jay Doherty cards. You know this is totally fair. Dan, you're up first. The status of my campaign as of today. Let's give everybody a round of applause.
Thank you very much, Paul Green. And my thanks to the City Club for sponsoring this debate, all of you for being here. The City Club has a fine and long tradition of encouraging and sponsoring public debate. You know, Tim Russert has a saying that if it's Sunday morning, it's meet the press. Well, I say that if it's a calorie-filled and coma-inducing lunch followed by an hour-long debate, it must be the City Club. 4 years ago, I was reelected to the Comptroller's office based on my fulfillment of promises that I had made 4 years prior. A promise to transform the Comptroller's office into one that demands accountability from government, from those who serve in government, and from those who do business with government. And we've done that. We've instituted the state's first rainy day fund so that government actually meets the promises it makes financially and has the ability to do so. We made sure that tax cheats could no longer get state contracts. And I was the first constitutional officer to issue an executive order banning contributions from those who do business with our office. Sometimes demanding accountability doesn't win you many friends. I've frozen pork projects for members of the General Assembly, halted pay raises for judges, and repeatedly taken on 2 sitting governors for their spending practices. But we've also transformed the office from one that writes checks to one that makes policy, including stem cell research and protecting overtime pay for Illinois workers. With your help, we can continue this progress, and I urge for your support this coming November.
Carole, you take a round of applause for Carole Pankau, please.
Thank you to the City Club of Chicago for sponsoring this debate. Only by bringing candidates together to discuss the issues of Illinois can voters truly make an informed decision. Last November, I was approached by the Republican Party to run for Comptroller. I thought about the financial condition of this state and realized that the people of Illinois deserved a proactive fiscal control officer. For almost a year, I have traveled the state and listened to the concerns of our residents. Wherever I went, one theme was constant. Illinois needs to right its fiscal ship. And how do we do this? We get back to good old-fashioned fiscal responsibility. We pay our bills, we make our pension payments, and then and only then consider any new programs. That's what I have learned as a state legislator for the past 14 years, 12 of those years on the Appropriations Committee and 8 on the Revenue Committee. 8 years on the DuPage County Board, 5 of which I wrote the budgets, and 8 years on my local school board working with the budget there and with my accounting degree from the University of Illinois. I have a plan to address and help solve the Medicaid crisis. I have a plan to measure the effectiveness of government programs. And I have a plan to make the Comptroller's office a proactive voice for the taxpayers and an active partner with the governor and the General Assembly. I believe my qualifications and message of fiscal responsibility will motivate voters to select me as the next Comptroller.
Now we'll have phase 2. Doing a great job, by the way, David. Going to phase 2 of the debate, where the moderator, me, asks a question of each of the candidates. The question will first go to.
Do you want us to go up there?
Do we sit here?
No, come up here.
Okay.
According to the technical people, that's not working.
Okay.
So we'll just do it up here. You know, this will help you, if you're running to have a lean and mean budget, now you'll have a lean and mean controller. I mean, just exercise. I don't know what I'm saying. My question first goes to Ms. Pankau. Carole, running as a Illinois Republican in 2006 has presented some problems to many of your candidates, many of your colleagues running on the state ticket. How, running for the office of Comptroller, do you believe the party, its leadership, and its financial commitment, how has that been in support of you and your candidacy?
How long?
Excuse me, young man here is 90 seconds, Dave.
He's very precise.
Yeah.
Yes. I think it's important that we start getting the message out that this state is in a fiscal crisis. For 3 years in a row now, we have had expenditures beyond the revenue that we have brought in. 2 years in a row, we have not made pension payments into the Public Employee Pension Fund. We have 400 dedicated funds that were signed off by the current Comptroller and the governor and swept into the general fund. And on top of that, we have Medicaid providers, doctors, hospitals, pharmacists, nursing homes that are waiting 6 months or longer to be paid for the services they've already rendered. This is pulling the state of Illinois down. It's time we address the fiscal mess in this state, because only that way is the economy going to start to rise again. We're going to attract business. We're going to attract jobs to this state again. We are starting to spiral downward where our economic condition is concerned. And we need a true fiscal control officer to be out there to say things about this, to give options, to give analysis, to put programs in place to address this most important issue in front of us right now. I'll just stand here.
That was a very good answer. Unfortunately, that wasn't the question I asked, but nevertheless, we'll try it. We'll try and get to that question a little later. Mr. Hynes, please, and listen carefully. The professor spent a lot of time preparing these questions. Mr. Hynes, can you maintain the excitement of this office since you have been reelected to this office once for the next 4 years? In other words, what can you do in the future that you haven't done in the past? That's the question, 90 seconds.
Well, I will answer your question, Paul, out of respect to you, but
Thank you very much.
for about 10 seconds. Then I'm going to respond to what she said. What I'm going to do to make things exciting over the next 4 years really has to do with the fact that we have serious financial challenges still facing our state. Ironically or sadly, the more difficult the financial situation of the state, the more exciting the job of the Comptroller, and Comptroller Netsch can tell you that. We have to, on a daily basis, manage a very difficult situation where we don't have enough money literally to pay the bills each and every day. My opponent mentioned that we've been overspending for 3 years, that we've spent more than we've brought in. And I would say it goes back much further than that, several decades, in fact. But over the last 8 years that I've been in office, this state has a bad practice of spending more than we have, underfunding our Medicaid program, which causes those payment delays. And my opponent voted for 5 of those budgets where we had spent more than we took in. So I think it's important to accept responsibility, certainly, but also point in the right place when it comes to these types of budgeting decisions. The Comptroller's Office pays the bills that the General Assembly creates. So we manage a very difficult situation, and for the next 4 years, my goal is to continue to provide that leadership and that fiscal discipline that I think has been the hallmark of my administration.
Thank you. All right. Moving right along, Dawn. Number 3, each candidate will ask the other candidate a question, no longer than 30 seconds for the question, 90 seconds for the answer. Mr. Hynes, what is your question for Ms. Pankau? You have 30 seconds to ask her the question. Ms. Pankau, you have 90 seconds to respond.
Well, I already mentioned the fact that for many, many years, the state has had this chronic and irresponsible policy of underfunding our Medicaid program. Last year, it was by over $3 billion. My question is, how does creating a separate checking account pay bills when you don't have A, the money, and B, the appropriation authority to do so? Creating a fund that when we already have over 500 funds in the state is like me if I had $100,000 of debt going to my bank and saying, can I have another checking account, and can you put $100,000 into it for me?
90 seconds, go ahead.
The Medicaid program is a grant program. 50% of the money comes from the state, 50% from the federal government. As you start paying out the state money and accessing that federal money, right now that federal money is being put in the general fund, mixed with everything out, and paid out whenever. My idea is to create the Medicaid Trust Receipt Account within the general fund. And that way, when that federal dollar comes in, it's going to be classified, identified, and immediately paid right back out to another provider, thereby turning your state money and your federal money faster and working down those number of days that our providers are waiting out there to be paid. It's going to access more federal money faster, and we're going to get the job done and bring back access and quality of health care to this state again.
Okay. Sort of like a pas de deux. Now, Ms. Pankau, you have a question for Mr. Hynes. You have 30 seconds to give the question. Mr. Hynes will have 90 seconds to respond.
Dan, would you agree to have each campaign staff work out a date and time before we leave this room today for one downstate debate before November 7th, focusing on the economy, the budget, and the economic condition of this state?
Absolutely. I would certainly agree to that. I think that debates are important to allow people in the state of Illinois to understand the issues that confront us and to make sure that we have the right leadership to address them. I've been very honored to have stood in this room on many occasions for debates for my first election and re-election, and it's a healthy way to inform people and to exchange ideas. I think it's important that the people in Illinois get to see who's running for office. That's why when I first ran for office, I visited all 102 counties. Since that time, I've been back over and over to let people know that their office holders, their elected officials, their public servants are accessible to them and are responsive to them. I would gladly participate in that debate, and I'll make sure my staff works with yours to make that happen.
Okay. Now, stage 4. Questions from the audience. There is a microphone. I know many of you are committed to the campaign of one of these two candidates. Of course, this is a city club where the rules are somewhat loose. All you have to do is state your name and address the question. Well, since you're the only one standing up, no problem as to how this is going to go. Your question is going to be to whom? You have to address it to one.
Both candidates.
Perfect. All we have to say then is both candidates will have 75 seconds to answer. Just give us your name and ask the question.
Jim Stone, ordinary businessman and citizen. Your comments suggested precisely that it's not the state that's creating the deficit, but it's the managers of the state, the governor, the comptroller, the legislators, and so on. I'd like to ask each candidate if they would support the following proposition, which we do in business management and which we do in family management. If the state runs a profit or surplus, then everyone who is elected or appointed to the state gets paid their salary, their expenses, and as normal. If the state runs a deficit, then nobody gets paid anything. Just like in business, you run a deficit, the owners, the managers don't get paid. What would the position of each candidate be on that? And do you feel that this would be a winning position in that?
Jim, we got the question. We got the question, and let me advise you for the future. Before we there you are, candidate. Don't run for public office.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
If I understand your question correctly, it's if the state runs a deficit, the elected officials don't get a salary.
Elected officials, appointed officials,
Okay.
and all those on their staffs don't get paid.
Okay, I understand. That's the question. Before I agree to that, I certainly have to consult with my wife. We just had 2 babies 3 weeks ago. We have 3 under 18 months. We spend about $800 a month on diapers, and that is not a joke. I do believe I earn my salary, and I do believe in fiscal discipline. And I'll tell you, and I don't want to make light of your question because I think it's serious because it represents the frustration people have with our government and these deficits. The problem with the question is that we have a balanced budget requirement in our Constitution. That is our required obligation each and every year. The problem is there are loopholes in our State Finance Act and other things that allow deficits to be disguised. It's our report each year and other advisories that we put out that demonstrate that we're not complying with that balanced budget. So what we need to do in this state is start following the law, start following our Constitution, start paying our bills on time, living within our means, making sure that we're accountable to people. We have proposed legislation each and every year that would require these things. It gets put in a drawer. It never gets passed by the legislature because these deficits are what allow legislators to spend more money. I'm opposed to it. I believe in a balanced budget, and I've tried to do it each and every year. Thank you.
Carole, you have 75 seconds.
There's a political commentator who on Wednesday morning will be on WGN, and I believe one of his favorite comments, I think his name is Green something. Anyway, I think one of his favorite comments is, government can never be run like a business. And that's because government doesn't produce anything. We don't produce anything. We give services. We do service to the people. And should there be a balanced budget? Yes. I would suspect that it would take, short of a constitutional amendment, a definition of a balanced budget to put in place what you would have to do to either get your pay that year or not get your pay that year. It sounds like a wonderful idea, but getting it through the General Assembly or any other means would probably be virtually impossible.
Kudos to who you cited. All right, sir. Now, here we go. Your question is to?
Both of them, if you please.
All my rules are going out the window. Okay. This time we'll start with Ms. Pankau. State your name, and they'll each have 75 seconds.
My name is Ted Hollander. My business is Comptroller Incorporated. We're professional controllers and always pay for the accounting one way or another. The question is that I've been given this advice numerous times, and that is if you want to sell it to the government, you've got to be willing to bid low and get paid late. Why should anybody want to work in that environment?
I will grant you that the state of Illinois has never been known as a prompt payer for anything to anybody. But the Comptroller, as the keeper of the checkbook of the state of Illinois, sets the priorities of who gets paid first, second, third, fourth, fifth, all the way down the line. That's a very, very big responsibility. And there's also something that the Comptroller could do. The Comptroller helps to set the direction and the priorities by that prioritization of payment as to which way the state is going. Right now, we are in a situation where I believe some of our priorities are misplaced, and that Medicaid providers or doctors, hospitals, pharmacists, and nursing homes should be the highest priority when access to health care is so very, very important. Why should, what was your question again?
The advice was, if you want to sell to government, you have to be prepared to bid low and get paid late. Why should anybody want to work in that environment?
Because they want the contract and they want the work.
Dan?
The answer is they shouldn't have to work in that environment. If you do business with the state of Illinois, if you provide the services that were expected of you, you should be paid sufficiently and you should be paid timely. The reason that is not happening is because, as I mentioned, we have a structural deficit in this state. Last year it was $3 billion. It's a simple consequence, an unfortunate consequence, of the fact that we have no discipline in Springfield. We spend more than we bring in. We have budget gimmicks that hide the deficit. And it would sound like a harmless, innocuous accounting thing. But as you know, you pay the price for bad accounting. And what really happens is that our providers, both Medicaid, human service providers, and our business providers, pay as a result. They wait. There's probably not a single major healthcare provider in the state that does not have an operating line of credit. They have to go out and borrow money because they know they're going to be waiting months and months to be paid by the state of Illinois. It is wrong. It's gone on too long. And the way to address it is to start budgeting accurately and honestly. And I would again say, it's incumbent upon those in the legislature, in particular those who've served on the Appropriations Committee, to recognize this and fix it.
Yes, sir. Step up. State your name, please.
My name is Larry White, and I'm an attorney. My question is for Comptroller Hynes.
Oh, now we're playing with the rules. Okay, good. Question for Mr. Hynes. Go right ahead.
Yes, Mr. Hynes, my question is this. Over the past 8 years, you have from time to time used the Comptroller position to raise issues other than what would probably be defined as the bare necessities of the job. What ideas, programs do you have in mind for the next 4 years?
Okay. You have 90 seconds to answer. You have 60 seconds to respond.
Well, I believe that if you simply pay the bills and do the financial reports and oversee local governments, regulate cemeteries, which are the traditional duties of the Comptroller, you do a real disservice to the office, because the office has significant stature, and under the right leadership it can have a tremendous influence on public policy in Illinois, both on the fiscal areas with respect to budget reform and implementing ideas that make our state more financially healthy, but also on issues that affect people across the state. I was very proud to have played a leadership role in protecting overtime pay when President Bush decided that he wanted to change the rules and undermine the 40-hour work week and deny overtime pay to people who work more than 40 hours a week. I was very proud to have advanced stem cell research in Illinois when President Bush single-handedly, unilaterally, and callously dashed the hopes of millions of Americans who see stem cell research as the way to cure diseases and eliminate pain and suffering among some of the most vulnerable people in our society. And I'm going to keep doing that because we haven't done enough. We need to fund stem cell research in this state because it's the right humanitarian and moral thing to do, but it's also a smart economic thing to do. The more we can put in terms of investments in stem cell research, the more we can attract biotech companies and other startups to this state. The more we can attract scientists and the smartest minds of the world to our state to build our infrastructure, our scientific infrastructure.
Pankau, you have 60 seconds to respond.
That's great, but right now we have a fiscal crisis. What I would like to see is the Comptroller's office to put in place a way of measuring the programs that we have right now. It's a program called SEA, Service Efforts and Accomplishments. And the current Comptroller will tell you that he already has this program in place. And indeed, he produces a document about yay thick with all kinds of data in it. But where is he during the appropriations process? Where is he helping to determine whether programs work or don't work? Where is he in those appropriations meetings saying, you know, this part of the program works, but this doesn't. Maybe we should consider restructuring here. Maybe we should analyze how this is working or how that is working. This is how much it's going to cost next year. That's how much it's going to cost the next year. This Comptroller's office can be such a help in appropriations. And yet, for the 14 years and the 12 years of that I have sat on appropriations, I have not seen Dan Hynes in an appropriation meeting except when his department is there and having their budget up.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is for Ms. Pankau. State your name, sir.
Actually, I had a question for Mr. Hynes.
Then take a step back. You have a question for Ms. Pankau?
Yes.
Good.
I think Comptroller Hynes just answered his position on stem cell
You
research.
state who you are, sir.
My name is Jared Joyce, and my mother has lupus. And from what I read and everything, stem cell research is a big, very popular item to be discussed these days and debated. And I want to know where Ms. Pankau stood on public funding for stem cell research.
90 seconds.
I'm in favor of stem cell research, but I'm not in favor of embryonic stem cell research. I was so very proud of my daughter last year when she had our granddaughter, and she donated the birth cord through LifeSource over here in Glenview to stem cell research. Instead of letting it shrivel up and just taking a piece of Scotch tape and putting in the baby book, she actually donated something that's going to help research from now and into the future. I was so very, very proud of her. And I think all the grandmas of this state should unite and say to their daughters, this is a wonderful thing to do, and those stem cells can be used for wonderful research.
60 seconds.
Well, I would agree that adult stem cell research can be very helpful and is very promising itself. But every scientist that I've talked to, and I've talked to many, will tell you that embryonic stem cell research is the future. It is the most promising because it has the most potential to cure diseases like lupus, juvenile diabetes, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, MS, and cancer and heart disease. And when you say you're against embryonic stem cell research, you're against that cutting edge research. I believe that the state has an obligation to fill the void that the federal government has created because of George Bush. Let's keep in mind why we're even discussing this at the state level. It's not because the majority of Congress doesn't support it. They passed stem cell research in the House and the Senate, but George Bush vetoed it because of his personal, narrow views on the issue. I think we should allow the scientists to decide where the most promise is in research, as long as it's done in an ethical and a moral manner, which government public funding will provide.
Step right up. Hold it for 1 second. I think you're the last questioner, so you'll address your question, and each candidate will have 75 seconds to respond. Go ahead, sir. State your name.
My name is John Haggerty. My question is, the issue of the Medicaid payment backlog has come up a few times today, and I guess I would just ask each candidate what your plans are to get that money flowing.
Dan, you have 75 seconds.
Well, my plan is to continue to demand that the General Assembly actually balance the budget and fund Medicaid appropriately. We have to remember why we're having payment delays. It's because year after year, budget after budget, the General Assembly and the governor underfund Medicaid by as much as $3 billion. They do it because of a loophole in the state finance law that allows them to, and they do it because it allows them to spend money on other things. My opponent has voted 10 times for budgets with Medicaid underfunded. And I'm willing to take constructive criticism. I'm willing to take advice and willing to take ideas. but I'm unwilling to take responsibility for something that's created by the legislature, especially by somebody who's on the Appropriations Committee and who's done nothing about this for more than a decade.
Pankau, you have 75 seconds.
I have put forth a plan that I can start on the very first day I am Comptroller. I don't need any legislation. I don't need any more powers. In fact, Dan could do this today. Dan could do this tomorrow if he wanted to. And that's by turning the money faster. But one of the things that he has been saying is that because I've been a member of the General Assembly, I haven't spoken up on this before. I have spoken up on it long and hard in Appropriations Committee. And I want to tell you, I went to Dan's own website last night. Since he became Comptroller, he has put out 155 press releases off of his own site. Only 5 of those dealt with Medicaid. Where was he? Where was his voice? Why didn't he ask for a supplemental appropriation? Why wasn't he there in Appropriations Committee or even in the budget discussions talking about how much money we're actually going to need and a program to get out of this debt? 5 press releases out of 155. He put out 3 about the CAFR, and cemeteries and funeral homes out of 155 press releases, 31. I think the priorities are messed up here.
Okay. Now we come to the last. I know some of you are groaning that this is the last part of it. I'm sorry, but we have our rules. This is the closing statement, why I am the best candidate for the office of State Comptroller. And we will reverse the order that we had at the beginning. Ms. Pankau, you will go first, and you will have 90 seconds to answer the question, why am I the best candidate for the office of State Comptroller?
Illinois is a great state. We are the 5th largest state in the nation. We are the transportation hub of the nation. We have tremendous human assets and natural resources to last us hundreds of years. And yet, how is it that we have a state government in crisis? It is because of government corruption and fiscal irresponsibility. People feel helpless about how their money is being spent and squandered. They're tired, and they want change from their elected officials. During this campaign, I have talked about paying down our Medicaid debt, establishing criteria to truly measure the effectiveness of government programs, and making the Comptroller's office a partner in the budget process. Illinois can be great. We need to stop pointing fingers and take positive action. I'm willing to do my part and provide new ideas and renewed energy to the office of the Comptroller. From the beginning, I have run an issues-oriented campaign. My goal has been to raise issues that affect our lives, to inform the people of the duties of the Comptroller, and discuss how the Comptroller can make Illinois a better state. Together, we can turn this state around. On Tuesday, November 7th, I ask for your support. Thank you.
Round of applause. For Hynes, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. 8 years ago, the people of Illinois elected me State Comptroller. And when I entered state government, I didn't see a place. I saw a culture that too often put the interests of politicians ahead of the interests of the people who they were elected to serve. I was 30 years old. I was a lot younger and maybe didn't have all the answers, but I knew that one thing would always stay true. I would remember the people who elected me and the trust that they gave me. My life's changed a bit since then. I was married, 3 kids, a little more gray hair. I'm sure those are not related. But I can honestly say that one thing has not changed. Every day I feel that incredible responsibility to uphold the trust I was given, to see how government could be held accountable and be responsive to people who rely on government, to be honest about budgeting, to stop corporate tax cheats, to institute ethics reforms, to stand up to wasteful spending no matter where it was or who proposed it. When something was wrong and it was within my power to change it, I changed it. And when it was not in my power, I let my voice be heard. Because that's what you deserve and what you expect. Many times, people become disappointed in their elected officials. But there's actually possibility in that. Because in order to be disappointed, you have to have expectations to begin with. I hope I've met yours, and I hope I have kept your trust. And I hope to have your support this November. Thank you.
Before we adjourn, first off, how about a big round of applause for both candidates?